Oh, you guys, this one feels really vulnerable, but this is exactly why I started this podcast, so we are doing it. In this episode, I'm going to share with you a behind the scenes look into my August income report. And August was my lowest income month since March 2023. That is 17 months in a row, my income has been higher than it was this past month in August. But despite that, to be honest, I am really, really proud of everything that I've accomplished in August, that my business has accomplished in August, and I'm really excited to share that with you today. So, in this episode, I'm going to share all of the money specifics. I'm going to share all the income that I earned from each source, what all my expenses were and what they paid for, and my profit margins. But more importantly, I'm also going to share why August was such a low month, relatively speaking, of course, why I made the decision to have the lowest month of the year. Yes, having August be my lowest month in forever was a strategic, thoughtful decision, not an accident, and the mindset hurdles that came up as a result. So, now before we get into things, I want to start off by saying that we're not going to do the whole comparison thing, right? So, I want you to stop right now and commit to not comparing yourself to what I'm going to share in this episode. I know that objectively, August was a great month, right? I earned more than I did in an entire year, my first year out of grad school in August. And probably more than most of you that are listening to this episode are even dreaming of ever earning in a month in your private practice. So I get that, right? But for me, in this season of my business, it was a very low revenue month. And for me, my business has shifted a ton over the last 2 years, right? My practice is set up, or my business is set up very differently now than it was when I was just a therapist in a solo private practice. I've invested in so much more team support. I've invested in software and systems. I've invested in really high level business coaching. And so my expenses are also probably a lot higher than you could ever dream of as well. So we're going to break it down into tons of detail, but kind of top line numbers that I want you to think about as we're going through this episode. So in August, my revenue was about $42,000. My expenses were about $29,000, which left me with $13,000 of profit, which was the money that I got to take home out of the business and kind of like put into my own bank account, so to speak. So let's go through that $42,062 of revenue that was brought in August. First up was therapy. So I still see a handful of therapy clients in my business. All of my therapy clients I've been seeing for at least 2 or 3 years. Now I haven't taken any new one-on-one clients in a while. Most of them are at like bi-weekly or monthly at this point because they're very long-term clients. And that has been intentional, right? I've decided for my own like personal fulfillment, my own journey with my career, that at this point I'm taking a step back from therapy. I'm not ready to give it up entirely just yet, but I have chosen to see much, much, much less therapy clients. The therapy clients that I do see, I charge all of them $275 a session. And so I probably did about 10 sessions in August. Business coaching brought in $10,731. And these are high ticket one-on-one coaching clients. So I have a few one-on-one coaching clients. Some of them I see for like 6 months at a time, and I've worked with for many renewals at this point. Some of them are one-off, so we can do like an intensive or a VIP day together. And these are usually therapists who are further along in their practice. They're further along with Instagram and are really looking for support, either short or long-term support with scaling their business. Then I had $12,055 of Private Practice Academy bundle sales. So this is my course, my signature program for therapists that helps walk you through everything from how do I start my practice? How do I get my system set up? What fee do I charge? How do I become an out-of-network provider? To actually, how do I market myself on Instagram? How do I grow a following? How do I convert that following into private paid clients on my caseload? To, how do I scale? How do I do brand deals? What if I want to launch a therapy group? All that good stuff is covered in the Private Practice Academy bundle. And that is an entirely self-paced course. Most of those people who chose to enrolled after watching a free webinar that I have. I'll go ahead and link that here in the show notes for you if you're interested in watching. You usually get a little discount after going through the webinar. And so we had probably like 13 therapists join the Private Practice Academy bundle during the month of August. Then the Reels membership for therapists brought in $10,471. And this is a monthly membership that's $37 a month. We have about 700 active members, which is super cool. And every single Monday, I send out 4 Reels ideas for the week and tell you exactly what to post, what trending sound to use. I give you fill in the blank scripts and prompts, filming instructions, examples, all of that. I had $1,681 in revenue from brand partnerships. And so we're going to talk about that in a second because I think that is one of the things that has been a little off this month. And I'm going to get into that a little bit later in the episode. But brand partnerships are basically when I partner with a brand to do content for them and to promote their services or their products on my Instagram page or to my email list, something like that. And then I have a VIP coaching community for therapists that have gone through my course, the Private Practice Academy bundle. And this VIP community brought in $4,455. And that includes like 2 group coaching calls a month. We have it's called a circle community, but we basically have like a messaging board where people ask questions and I answer them every single day. They get some guest lessons, stuff like that. So it's kind of the not self-paced part of the Private Practice Academy bundle, and it's an additional fee. And, I get to work with a lot of therapists in that program, which is really cool. So total revenue for the month was $42,062. And I did not launch anything new this month, right? There was no big sale. There was no big promotion. There was no big push on emails because I was launching this podcast, which we'll talk about in a bit too. But I want to kind of, before I pull out like all the lessons learned, which I promise we're going to get to, I want to just kind of go through the numbers piece by piece so that you can have context when I'm talking about the lessons. So let's do expenses. So my biggest expense was help for my team, and this was $14,472. And let's talk about the people that I have on my team. So I have a full-time executive personal assistant, Sam, and Sam does a little bit of everything in my business. She helps me manage my inbox. She helps to put together graphics. She helps to do like almost any task. She is starting or doing some portion of it, which is just like super helpful. She's kind of my right hand. She does a little bit of everything with me and helps me kind of keep things moving, right? If you're wondering, how does Kelly have the same hours in the day as everybody else? I have Sam also who works like 40 hours a week in my business. So that's super, super helpful. I have my operations manager, Rachel, and she works 15 to 20 hours a week. She is my go-to girl. She's been with the company now for, I think, close to 2 years. And she sort of is like the project manager for my business. So if, like, let's say this podcast launch, right? Basically, she took down and broke down, okay, in order to launch this podcast, we're going to need to do these 70 tasks. And Kelly, you're going to do these 15 by this date. Here are the different steps we need you to do. Sam, I need you to do these 30 tasks. We're going to talk to the web designer and she's going to do this other stuff, and really just helps to coordinate and oversee everything and get any project from step 1 to step 100 done and completed with all parties. So definitely appreciate her, and she helps me to not feel like a chicken with my head cut off because she helps to hold so much of the responsibility with me. I brought on a podcast manager, Jill, who's responsible for editing all the podcast episodes. So, she mixes them together here. She uploads them onto all the different podcast platforms. She writes some show notes for them that go on the website. She adds in all my ads for the podcast, all of that good stuff. I have a copywriter, Jess, who does most of my email marketing, and we've worked together for a few years now. She is absolutely lovely and really has a good feel for my business, how I help therapists, and it's really nice to have that extra support. Then I have another copywriter, Caitlin, who writes monthly blog posts for my Sit with Kelly website, and that's really helpful for my website just ranking on Google with search engine optimization and all that. And then I don't always work with them like on a monthly basis, but Brandwell Designs has designed all of my websites, and we did some updates and new pages this month with the podcast and some other pages that we added. And Brandwell Designs was part of that process, so they came in and like designed and redesigned some pages. And so that team support cost $14,472 for the month of August. My next biggest expense was my business coach, and that cost $7,623. So I see a one-on-one business coach as well. I think that is super helpful for me and my growth. I work with Lacey Seitz. You can find her on Instagram at A Lit Up Life. And she actually charges like quite an interesting way compared to a lot of other business coaches. So she does what's called the partnership model. So I pay her $1,250 a month as like a base rate for us to work together. And we do 3 45-minute Zoom coaching sessions per month. And then I get access to her with like one-on-one messaging support in between. But where it gets interesting with the way that she charges is she also charges 10% of new profit brought in our work together. So I don't work with her on my therapy clients. I don't work with her on like my brand partnerships or like consulting or speaking stuff. I really just work with her on business coaching. So like any one-on-one business coaching that I do with clients, or when I used to do my mastermind, the Reels membership, Private Practice Academy, my VIP community, Lacey gets 10% of all of that new revenue. And so the amount that I pay her each month really varies. But I like that she is very invested in my business, right? We've worked together for a long time, definitely over a year now, maybe a year and a half. And she gets it and is invested in helping me to succeed. And so it's money very well spent, but definitely my second highest expense there is business coaching. Next up, my third highest expense is software and apps. And so these are all of the different like softwares and programs that I use to really reduce the amount of time that it takes for me to do something and the amount of time that it takes for my team to do something. So anywhere that I can automate, I am a huge fan. So for my therapy practice, I use Mentaya, which helps to submit out-of-network claims for my therapy clients. I will include a code for that in the show notes. I use Jane, which is my electronic health record for my therapy practice. So in Jane, I'm able to schedule clients, I'm able to charge them, I'm able to do their notes, their assessments, all of that. I see them for telehealth sessions, like really everything for my therapy practice runs through Jane. And then I also pay for HIPAA compliant Google Suite. So my like Google Calendar and Mailbox and all of that, I have the more expensive, HIPAA compliant G Suite option. Some other things that I use in my business are QuickBooks for like bookkeeping. Gusto I use to pay myself and my contractors and my employee. I use ManyChat. Basecamp is like a project management tool that I use. We use LastPass to share passwords amongst team members, Calendly to schedule things like podcasts, interviews, coaching clients, all that. Zencaster to record the podcast. I use Webinar Kit to host my free trainings and webinars. And then also this program called Zapier. I don't know if you've heard of it before. If you are in the one-on-one therapy side of your business, you probably do not need something like Zapier. But if you are scaling and you're kind of working across multiple platforms, Zapier is super, super helpful. And I would definitely recommend looking into that. So software and apps was $2,163. Next highest expense was travel expenses. So I'm really pumped. In September, I am flying to New York City to meet with a former client turned current client again, Allison. And we are going to do a one-on-one VIP day in New York. So I spent $1,860 on flights and hotels in order to go up there and do this coaching work with her. I'm also going to be doing like an in real life, in person brand partnership while I'm up there. I'm hosting a networking event for a meetup for New York City therapists. So got some other fun things going on, but travel expenses were $1,860. Okay. My license for my LCSW was up for renewal in both New York and New Jersey. And so I did some CEUs for that. And I also purchased a course on Instagram ads for my executive assistant to take. And that both of those trainings led up to $500. The renewal fees for both of my licenses was $384. there was payroll taxes on my salary and my executive assistant's salary. That was $511. And just to clarify, that's not the taxes that I pay. I pay a lot more than $511 in taxes, but that's the taxes that my business pays for me. Um, Instagram ads. So I've just started experimenting with Instagram ads. I haven't gotten any sales from them yet. That's kind of why we're investing in the training for my executive assistant to take. But I spent $265 in August, kind of experimenting with Instagram ads to see what we can do there. And then I spent, lastly, $1,134 on my random other shit category. And so this is client gifts. This is gifts for podcast guests that come on. I've been doing a few giveaways as a way to give back on my Sit with Kelly and Business of Therapy Instagram pages. So that was included in there. When therapists join the Private Practice Academy bundle, I ask them, why they joined. And when they send me more information, I send them like a little thank you coffee gift card and then some office supplies. So just kind of like random miscellaneous stuff. So all this together, right, totaled $28,912 of expenses, which meant that I was left with $13,150 in profit. And that's still like a pretty decent amount of money to take home at the end of the month. So nothing was wrong here per se, but it definitely felt very, very different for me. My expenses were pretty typical this month. I would say that they tend to be between like 25 and 30,000. So we were kind of right in that normal range. But because my revenue was much lower, my profit margin was much lower. So in August, my profit margin was 31%, which meant that for every dollar that I took home, I got to keep 31 cents of it, and the other 69 cents went to expenses in the business. Now, my goal for where I'd like my profit margin to be in my own business is between 65 and 70%. That's what feels really good to me. That's kind of the balance that I like of I'm not like working myself to the bone. I'm not the only one doing things. I'm able to get support for myself, for my team, for my business. And it doesn't feel like I'm working, quote unquote, for nothing, right? Like I'm still taking home the large majority of that. And so even though August profit margin sucked by that standard of 65 to 70%, overall for all of 2024, we are right on track. So for the year, my profit margin is at 67%. And so August got to be kind of a fluke month. But overall, we're very happy with where things are at. So I want to share why August was such a low month, relatively speaking, right? Because I didn't go on vacation in August. You might have seen I was gallivanting around New York and Europe in June and July. I'm going to New York and to Sedona and Denver in September, but I didn't travel in August. I took one long weekend to go see my husband's family in Boston, and I actually only took off 2.5 work days. So I don't count Saturday and Sunday as like a work day. Those are off regardless. But I took off 2.5 days on like a Monday through Friday situation during the month of August. So I worked my butt off in August, and it was still the lowest month that I had in 17 months. And one of the reasons why is one, this podcast, right? The podcast was a ton of work, but it was a long-term play, right? So me launching the podcast doesn't mean that instantly it's bringing in tons of revenue, tons of brand partnerships, tons of more sales into my programs. That's going to take a little while to build up my listenership, to pitch those opportunities, to build trust with you, to make you want to work with me. Like all of that takes time. And so the podcast is a long-term play. I also mentioned brand partnerships before. So I actually did a ton of really cool brand partnerships in August, but brand partnerships work a little bit different than like selling a course or having a therapy session, in that you don't get paid right away. So usually with brand partnerships, the way that it works is when you're done with the very last piece of content that you are contracted to do as part of the partnership, then depending on the brand, 30 to 90 days after that, you get paid. And so I did a lot of brand partnerships in August that are really fun. Some of them are published, some of them have yet to be published, but they won't get paid until probably closer to the end of the year. And so that also felt like I was doing a lot of work, but it wasn't reflected in the revenue that I was bringing in. I booked a really cool speaking gig, which I'm really pumped about. I booked that in August. I started prepping all my slides and stuff. I'm going to be delivering that in September and October. There's a few different workshops I'm doing, but I'm not going to get paid for that until afterwards, right? So again, that's more work that I'm putting in now that's not being reflected in that revenue. And then I'm launching in September, October, and November. So launching is basically when like you see me doing like a big sale on one of my programs, right? So maybe the Private Practice Academy bundle or the Reels membership, and I'm talking about it like nonstop for 10 days. I usually do some kind of free training or event or challenge first, and just putting in like a ton of effort into selling, right? Like it's a whole promotional period. I've got daily emails, I've got the daily Instagram content. I have launches planned in September, October, and November, but I'm not launching anything in August besides the podcast, which is free and is not bringing in revenue at this point in time. So in order to launch September, October, November, me and my team are putting in the work for those future big months now, right? Like I'm reviewing email copy, I'm like planning out my webinar, I'm doing all this stuff behind the scenes. And I know that those big months are coming. And so for right now, I'm going to protect my energy and not do something else in August besides launch this podcast. So all of that said, let's talk about why I made the decision to have the lowest month of the year in August. Because yes, this was a very strategic, very thoughtful decision that I made in my business. And by no means was it an accident. So every single business is going to have ebbs and flows, right? Despite what you see online, especially if you follow a lot of business coaches, I think it's really, really important to know that not every month is going to be better than the last, right? If you are always pushing yourself to earn more, earn more, earn more, that is a very, very, very fast recipe for burnout. You need to be willing to have ebbs and flows in your business, right? So, like, let's say that you are just seeing one on one therapy clients. There's going to be some months where you earn a lot more money. There's going to be some months where you go on vacation and you earn less money. And you have to let that be okay for yourself, right? You want to zoom out and look at your income by maybe quarter or by the year and see overall, is it growing quarter to quarter, year to year? If you are in a growth stage of your business, I hope the answer to that is yes. But that doesn't mean that like you can never take a vacation and have one lower month. No, right? Like that would be nonsense. You need to allow yourself to do that. And of course, there's tons of ways to create financial safety in that, to have savings in your business, to pay yourself consistently, regardless of the amount of revenue you're bringing in each month. Maybe that's a whole nother podcast episode for another day. But every business will have ebbs and flows. And same thing with if you're in like the more scaling side of your practice, that's also going to be true, right? Like there's going to be some months where you launch and you have crazy high revenue months, right? I've had multiple six-figure cash months this year alone. But I can't expect that now every single month has to be six figures or I'm doing something wrong, right? Like I would have to work a ton for that to happen. I would need to launch every month for that to happen. And that's just not something I'm willing to do, right? Like I don't want to sacrifice my work-life balance. I don't want to have my business be my entire personality. And so that's not on the table for me. And so therefore I have to know that there's going to be ebbs and flows, and my job is to ride that wave. The other thing I want to talk about is really being willing to put in the work before the results come, right? So this podcast getting off the ground was a ton of work, right? It took a long time for me to come up with my ideas for my podcast episodes, make an outline for them, understand all the new technology, hire a podcast producer who was going to edit all the shows, figure out how I was going to promote it in emails and in social media. I think also because it was new, I overthink it a lot, right? So like making a reel normally feels really easy for me. I'm able to do it in just a few minutes, but the reels for my podcast, I wanted them to be perfect. And I just had like so much more thought and energy and effort went into it. And that's okay, right? I've already helped literally thousands of therapists in the Reels membership and the Private Practice Academy bundle. But my hope is that even more of you that are listening here decide to take the leap into one of those programs or my one-on-one coaching work after listening, right? I hope that you get to know me better. I hope that you're inspired. I hope that you trust me. I hope that you see that there's a lot I can teach you and show you, and that helps to increase revenue in my business long term. I also have one sponsor for the podcast now, but I hope to have many sponsors for the podcast down the road. right? And so these are things that will take time. And that doesn't mean that I shouldn't start a podcast because it's not going to immediately lead to more sales or more sponsorships, right? But it means that I have to be willing to put in the work now to have those results that will come in 3 months from now and 6 months from now. So for you, as an example, right? If you have a mostly full caseload and you're like, okay, I want to add another revenue stream to my business. I want to scale. Let's say you want to make a course, right? It's going to require a ton of work up front. You're going to have to outline the curriculum. You're going to have to make slides. You're going to have to record. You're going to have to find a course platform. You're going to need to get all the information into it. You're going to need to make a sales page and email content and social media content. You're going to need to promote it. And that's going to take time and effort before you actually start making your first sales, before it becomes really profitable for you. But you need to be so steady and so certain in your business and where you're going that you're willing to take that high work month and that lower income in the meantime, knowing that the bigger months are coming, right? Knowing that this is a long-term plan for you and that you are committed to where you want this to take you in your business. So another example of like a short-term versus long-term win, I could have launched something this month, right? In August. Like I could have said, I'm going to sell a workshop or I'm going to do a flash sale on the Reels membership or the Private Practice Academy bundle, or I'm going to sell a package of intensives. I'm going to reach out to former clients and try and book another VIP day. Like I could have done any of those things, but that to me would have been a short-term win. Like I would have done that just so I could get a few thousand more dollars this month. And so my ego could feel better about not having the lowest income month. But instead, I chose to say, I want to have work-life balance in August, and I want the long-term win. So, short term, if you are starting your private practice, maybe the short-term win for you is filling your caseload with insurance clients who are going to pay you less than $100 a session, right? That is a way to get more money into your business in the short term. You might need that from a practical standpoint, right? Like you and your family might need that income, or you might just need that from like an ego standpoint of, I feel bad that my income hasn't increased yet, and that is uncomfortable for me. And so therefore, I'm going to take more insurance clients. I think the long-term play, right, is how do I build a business that is sustainable? How do I build a business where I don't have to see 30 clients a week in order to earn 6 figures? How do I build a business that I'm really proud and excited about, that has clients I love working with every day? And to me, that's building a caseload that's private pay, that's from Instagram, and that are clients in your niche that you love working with. And so for me, that long-term play was this podcast instead of just selling something random. So that's kind of like my thoughts here of like being willing to not just like go after that short-term win to chase like higher income every single month, but instead to be able to zoom out and say, long-term, what is my plan? Where am I going? And how does this fit into it? So, that's kind of easier said than done, for being honest. I went into August knowing this is going to be a low income month, and there were still a lot of mindset hurdles that came up as a result. So even though I felt 100% certain in my decision to do this, I knew it was the right thing for me. I knew it was the right thing for my energy. I knew it was the right thing for my business. I even knew it was the right thing for my relationship to not like be locked in my office all of August. And I was really, really, really excited to bring this podcast to life. But when the time came, right, when we got like 10 days into August and I was like, oh shoot, like this really is going to be my lowest income month, I got really scared what all of you would think, if I'm being totally honest. I started to have a ton of imposter syndrome, right? If I have to share, and I don't have to share, I choose to share, but I'm going to stand in integrity and do that. If I have to share my income report monthly, because I'm going to share it when it's lower, not just when it gets higher. I share my income report every single month, no matter what. And you're able to see that my income dipped dramatically. Does that mean that you're going to think I'm a shitty business coach? Does that mean that you're going to trust me less in helping you to build your private practice? I don't know. I hope not. I can always make more money. I'm pretty certain of that. I could have done a flash sale. I could have sold a bunch of intensives, taken on a one-on-one client I wasn't like over the moon excited about working with. But why? Why would I do that? To prove what? To prove it to who? Right? And I think at the end of the day, even though I was scared of like the judgment or the perception of what would people think about me having this lowest income month, the biggest thing I really needed to prove was to myself more than to anybody else. I needed to prove to myself that it was okay to play the long game. I needed to prove to myself that I don't need more money all the time, right? Like we are financially doing very well. We are safe, we are secure, we have lots of savings, we've got investments. Like I don't need to bring in more money every single month just to do it. I needed to prove to myself that I could bring this podcast to life, right? Like this has been on my goal list every year since I started my private practice has been to have a podcast. I wanted to have something free that could help thousands of people. I wanted to have something free that could go more in depth than Instagram ever could. And that's exactly what I did, right? I prioritized doing that. And I'm so, so, so proud to have this podcast out here. So, kind of to wrap it up, if you are in this stage of your business and you are in a growth stage or a scaling stage or a stage of burnout even, and you're wondering like, what's next? Should I have a lower income month? Like, am I allowed to do that? These are the three questions that I thought through that I think would be really helpful for you to ask yourself in your own business. So first question is, a year from now, what do I want my business to look like? And what can I do this month to help me get closer to that goal? So, having a clear idea of what your big picture is and not just thinking about like, okay, my big picture is this monetary goal. So, like, I should earn this amount of money to get me closer to there. Instead, think about like, what are the actions that you are taking and how are they bringing you closer to your goal? Is there something strategically that you should be doing? Whether it's networking, investing more time into Instagram, talking with your clients about getting off of insurance in 3 months, telling people you're giving yourself a raise and you're increasing your rates. Like, is there something you should be doing now that maybe doesn't have an immediate payoff, but that will bring you closer to where you're trying to go long term? I think is really, really helpful. The second question that I think needs to be asked is, are my financial needs covered? And that's really important to know, right? Like you need to have a baseline level of safety in your business, in your own personal finances, in order to decide, like, yeah, I'm going to take a lower income month. Like, for sure, that is a privilege that I have that I'm able to say that. And it's important that you know going into it that you are safe to do that, right? I think that that is just really important. And for me, I knew I was safe to do it financially, and I'm on track with my goals for the year in personal and business finances. We're on track for like $1 million in revenue this year. I don't need to have August be a crazy high month. And then the third question you need to ask is, what is my capacity right now? Do I need to be doing more or do I need to be doing less? Right? So I traveled a ton in June and July, and I'm going to be traveling a ton in September. So in August, I had the capacity to work, right? Like I was actually sitting in my own office. I had, 8 hours a day to sit in front of the computer. And I wanted to spend that time bringing longer term projects to life, not chasing an immediate revenue bump, but instead thinking about what can I put in now while I'm here, while I have the time before September gets crazy with travel. We have a bunch of family coming in October. We're hosting for Thanksgiving. I'm going to Dominican Republic and to New York in December. Like August is my month to like crank things out and get it done. And so that is what I focused on. And I didn't want to just add more for the sake of it, right? I wanted to get ahead on things for my launches that are coming in September, October, November. I wanted to get this podcast out there. And so for me, I decided I had capacity to work. Yeah, I was going to do more this month than I had in June and July for sure. But that doesn't mean that I needed to do even more in order to prove something and to have more revenue. So, my hope for you is that you are also willing to play the long game. I think that this is one of the most important things that you can do in building a sustainable business, right? So, if you need clients quickly because your income depends on it, of course, I want you to do what you need to do to make that happen, right? Maybe that means taking some insurance based clients. Maybe it means getting panels with insurance. Maybe it means doing some like sliding scale stuff. maybe it's seeing people outside of your desired niche. Like, you might have to make some of those decisions. And by all means, you should do what you need to do to get your financial needs met. But do not stop there, right? Once you get your needs met, I want you to go after something bigger. I want you to really stop and think about and give yourself full permission to figure out what sort of practice you would love, love, love to have, right? What sort of practice would you feel so proud to tell your friends and family about? What sort of practice would you dream of waking up to and working on a Monday, right? And go after that, right? Like, show up on Instagram, raise your rates, get those private pay clients who are your ideal client that you love to talk to every single day, and be willing to put in the work to make that happen before you get the results, because these things don't happen overnight, right? The first day that you post an Instagram reel, you're not going to get your first client probably. You're going to need to post for weeks or maybe even months before those results come. And I really want you to be willing to put in the work to have those really, really feel good, life-changing results that will come when you are consistent, when you take action, when you back that action with strategy, and you show up for yourself and you go after your goals. Business is going to have ups and downs. It doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong. It probably means you're on the right track, especially if you can see the bigger picture and where it plays in. So I really encourage you to keep going. And thank you for letting me share this vulnerability with you today. I would love to know what you thought of this episode compared to my normal monthly income report reels that you see on Instagram. So if you have any feedback for me, please send me a DM at Business of Therapy, and I'd love to chat. And I'll talk to you soon and see you next week.